Okay, so when you're done this exercise, you'll end up with a geometric drawing of these three color models. You can be doing these three color models in the RGB color space. So here you can see that Illustrator tells you which color space you're in. Just beside the title of the name in the tab. And then you'll be doing this color model again, but you can be doing it in the CMYK color space, just so you can compare the difference between those two color spaces. So we're looking at three color models in two color spaces, and I'm giving you the option of doing a little more complex diagram using the skills that I'll show you. You can do either of these diagrams instead of this simpler one. And all I want you to do is indicate here which ones are primary, which ones are tertiary, and which ones are secondary colors. So let's get started. So I'll start you off here. So you need to start here with a circles rotated. I want you to make sure that you're rotating them geometrically. So using the rotation tool and rotating them by degrees around so they're evenly spaced. I'll be evaluating your ability to do that. So again, the content of this course is cumulative. If you don't know how to do that, you'll have to go back to a previous tutorial to see how to do that. So this is what we're going to describe here is a color wheel, and it's this idea of hue, saturation, and brightness. With the simplest form, we'll just be looking at hue. So it's the value of the hue around the circle is a way that we understand colors when the first color model that we are taught. And this relates, so if you don't have this color palette open, make sure you open it here from the Windows menu, open your color palette, and we're in the RGB color space. So if you're not in the RGB color space, you're going to have to go here to document color mode and choose RGB, and that'll give you RGB color space. And once you have this set up, then I can guide you through doing the next steps. So here, this is called the color wheel, and it's hue, saturation, and balance. And again, we're only looking at hue. And if you go to your color palette, click on the hamburger icon and switch to, oh, this is the RGB one. Let's go over here. RGB one is RGB, right? Okay. So here, you're going to switch, click on the hamburger icon. You are going to go to hue, saturation, and balance. And so this first value is the hue, the second one is saturation, third one is balance. If I click on this first top color, you can see that it is set to 100 brightness, so 100 brightness, 100 saturation, and 0 hue. And this is like our color spectrum, so it's a model we understand, but we tend to understand it using a conceptual model of a color wheel. So at the top here is red. Go to the next one, and let's just add 30 degrees. So like this circle, the hue is divided up into 360 degrees. At the far end, 360 is red, 360 is red, and 0 is red as well. They're the same value, right? So if we start here and go all the way around, we should end up with red on the top. So but the thing about it is that this color spectrum does not quite equal the way we understand the color wheel. So the way that you can do that is just simulate it. So what I'm going to do is enter here 30 degrees for the first one. So that gives me an orange. And you're welcome to just use a slider here if you would like, and just find a color that you find approximates the way that you understand it. So if we have red, orange, yellow, which is about 60, and blue, which is about 250 degrees. This is a very typical blue. And then actually we need one more color in here, which is green. So let's pull this one back, and that works at about 60 degrees more, so 90. So at about 90 we get a green that we understand. And here, pull this one back. Here, blue. So I got 220, gives me a good blue, one that I understand. And then here, and this is color perception. This is the way that we perceive this color. We understand this color to be blue, this to be green, and this one to be purple or violet. Somewhere around 300 degrees, 290, we get one that we would probably approximately agree on. This is what we understand it to be. And this is one of the first conceptual models that we're taught normally about how to understand color. And then what I want you to do is I'm going to actually use another tool to find the color in between. So I want to have primary colors. I want you to distinguish, using your model, your drawing, I want you to distinguish between the primary colors, which is red and yellow, and we understand that in between these is orange. So if we combine these two colors, we will get orange. And then we understand that if we combine blue and red, we get purple. Blue and yellow, and we get green. So in between these two, the way I want you to find it is by using this tool here, which is the blend tool. So what I'm going to get you to do is to select all the objects on this active artboard. Take your selection tool and deselect the type label. Doesn't matter too much, but just to be a little bit more precise. And then what I'm going to do is get you to click on the red, and then the orange, and then the yellow, and the green, the blue, the purple, and then the red again. And so this tool, the blend tool, is blending the colors between the shapes. But interestingly, if we look at it closer, you can see that it's doing more than blending the colors. So, and I'm going to show you some more complex versions of this later, but I want you to try this. So go here to View, Outline, and it looks like Illustrator just blending the colors. But what I want to do is take another look at this, preview, and this blend becomes an object that you can control in Illustrator by going here to the bottom of the Properties palette with the blend selected and click on Blend Options. You can see that it is creating shapes, enough shapes to create this smooth color. So if we change it to specified steps, you can see that nothing has changed in the image, but it's telling us how many steps Illustrator used to create that gradient. So 127 steps in between each circle. Let's change that to 2. You can see that what Illustrator has done is it's transformed the shape. So it's the same shape, but it's transformed this blue shape to this purple shape. And because the shape is the same size, it has Um, it looks like it's just transforming the color, that's all. But let's go ahead and click. Let's go ahead and set this to 1 and go OK. And I want to change all of these secondary shapes to a smaller color. So I'm using my direct selection tool, and I'm selecting on this first one, the purple one, the orange one, and the green one. So I have all these 3 selected. I'm going to go here too, and I'm going to resize them. So I'm going to go using my transform each. I can actually change the size of this individual shape. And I'm going to do it by 61.8%. And again, you got to do it twice in this palette. And click OK. And here you can see that now maybe you can start to understand now what Illustrator is actually doing, because it's not just transforming the color, it's transforming the shape as well. This is still an editable object. So I can go here with my selection tool, select this blend, go to blend options, and I can change the number of specified steps. But just do it at 1. OK. I actually want this one smaller. I'm going to go ahead and go to Object and Blend, Expand. And what that's going to do is now I can actually, I go to View, you can see here we have another shape. And we're going to do this again, but with more complex shape. So let's just go ahead and look at this. Preview, select all the tertiary ones. So there is 6 of them. 6, yes. And let's scale them so they're smaller. So I'm just going to, what I'm going to do first is I'm going to go and turn on the center point. So I can see when this lands on our guide. And I'm going to go get my scale tool, double click. And I'm just going to scale it to the point where that center point is landing on the guide, approximately. Go OK. And now I can transform each. And I'm going to make it actually 30% and 30. And now we have our three different groups. So we've grouped them by similarity. This is our primary, secondary, tertiary. So if you want to use squares instead or triangles, that may be another way to group them by similarity. What I wanted you to do next is I want you to actually put labels on it. So using the same typeface that you use here. So the way I got into this is by double clicking. So you can see here that we are in the isolation mode. But the other way to edit it is to use the direct selection tool. So if you look here at our layers, you can see here, take the selection tool and select this, and we have a group. If I use the direct selection tool and I click on one of these, deselect first, you can see I'm just selecting the one. So that's, again, the selection tool and the direct selection tool. I want to put a label there, so I'm going to actually take this one, copy so I get the same style, paste, and I put this right up against there. And this is my tertiary. Color. So all three of those are tertiary. If you wanted to, you could use a legend. So select this one. Go to Properties Palette, and okay, there we go. I lost my styling, so I'm using the IBM Plex Sans. Click on the ellipses. On paragraph, click on the ellipses, and add a margin to it. So I'm going to make this 18 points. I'll take this and rotate this 30 degrees. Copy 36. And this is secondary. And rotate, this time minus 60. And primary. So that's color wheel. Yeah, again, level of complexity, that'll determine what grade you're going through for this exercise. I am going to do the next two. So I'm going to lock these. Unlock the guides. Leave this unlocked. Take the artboard tool and drag this across. Make a copy. Okay, this one I'm doing the RGB. So this is color wheel. This is my third version. So if you're wondering how else you might, some other ideas for how to create this conceptual model, some of them are clearer than others. So if we look here, the artboards, this is one way that I did it. There's one way you could interpret the conceptual model, not as clear, but just having fun with this blend tool. Just whatever you do, make sure you put labels in. So the more you can describe, the better. You can see here that this one is describing not just hue, but hue and brightness as well. So this one here just describes hue. And this one here is also just describing hue. So hue, saturation, brightness, but it's just hue. And this is, and same with this one. Okay. Three. So this is the one I just did. So make sure that you label it and put labels on the make sure you indicate which type of color it is. Unlock this. For some reason, it's so pretty amazing. I just discovered why my screen recording software keeps failing on me. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is, now that these objects are locked in my guides, this guide should not be locked. Let's see. Object, unlock all. So I can't use that keyboard shortcut. That's what I just discovered, because it's actually shared with my screen recording software. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to delete these two here. Or delete this one. Delete. Select all these objects. I'm just going to copy this artboard here. So I'm going to take my artboard tool, click and drag across. And because this palette's up here, I couldn't let go on the right spot, but I'm going to just drag this back. Okay. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all these objects here and delete them. Oh, not this. And lock my guides. And this one is going to be RGB. So this is going to be RGB, which is additive color. So that means that the more light that you add, the more color that you add, the closer that you get to white. So those colors keep adding together until we end up with white. And this is consistent with what So this is what your finished color model is going to look like, or any way that you want to describe it. You don't have to describe it this way, just so long as you're using geometric transformations. You can do this any way you want. So I'm not going to show you how to draw this. You can draw it whichever way you want. I take my tool here. I'm just going to show you how to achieve this simulation. So you're going to create these objects like this. I'm not going to show you how to make the objects, but I will show you how to do the simulation. So this is RGB, which is additive. That's right. I gotta make sure that I spell these things right. So this is, RGB is additive. So that means add color, you end up with white. It keeps adding together. So the more light you add, the more color you get. And it's consistent, again, with what Isaac Newton discovered. Pretty sure it was Isaac Newton that did that. Let's see. Color. Yeah, Isaac Newton. One of his great discoveries is what people thought that prisms did is they added like they made light impure. So a prism would take this pure light. So light was considered this element, this pure element. And what a prism did, so when you put the light through the prism, and here's a picture of Isaac Newton doing it. What the idea was is that the prism would be was adding an impurity to the light, and that's why you got this rainbow. Was impurity added to the light. But what Isaac Newton proved, and it's a very simple way that he did it actually, is he proved that no, that actually what it is it's these components of light that are being separated by the prism. And then he proved that because he shone it through a prism, so it divided, and then he brought all the colors back together again with another prism and made it white. So, the first prism divided it. The next prism did not add impurities. It brought all the components back together, and we ended up with white color. So that's this idea behind RGB. RGB is just using three colors. So it uses red, green, and blue. So RGB. So that's the way all your monitors work, your iPhone. A lot of billboards work that way. It's light. It's the inverse of printed color. It's additive. So the more color you add, the closer you end up to white. So the way that we model this here in the digital space, the way that we describe it is this way here. We take our color palette and we switch it to RGB mode. So here we have RGB mode, RGB, red, green, and blue. And it's in 256 values to it. So you can divide the amount of red by 256. This is the model that we understand. And that means that the top one is because there's no zero, right? Because there's no one. So we have 1 to 256, which is 255, which is, 0 to 255, which is 256 values. So if you set your first one to 255, and I'm just going to reset this. Oh, no, let's do the values first. So this is 255 red, 255 green, and 255 blue. So we understand this to be blue. It's close to this blue here. Understand this to be yellow is close to this one. We understand this to be red is close to that one. So this is the way we understand these colors. And then you can see if you add 255 units of blue, so all the blue, all the green, you end up with this cyan kind of color. So it's, this isn't the way that we typically understand color, but it's a technical conceptual model of how color works. It's a way of describing it for the screen. So when you design something for the screen, something digital, you're using RGB. And you can see here that so far all of your files in Illustrator have been built in RGB in the RGB model, and it's where you should work. So your working file should be RGB. Don't work in CMYK. So you work in RGB and you convert it later to CMYK. So here we have our three colors. So how do we get this white in the center? Well, the way you do it in Illustrator is through this, in your properties palette under appearance, there's this concept of opacity. And you can just set the value of the opacity, anywhere between 1 and 0, but you can also set how the blends happen, and that's similar to in Photoshop. It's a drop-down menu, and by default it's set to normal, so there's no blending between them. But what we're going to do for this one is we're going to choose this blending mode that's called difference. And this is the simulation that you get, which is correct. So this is the way it would look if you were adding all those colors together. And the way that we know this is right is because we can actually take this whole shape here and we can actually use the Pathfinder to divide it into individual pieces. So then we end up with an object that is so we have to do a little bit differently. We have to take all of these objects and we actually have to, this one may work, expand it, white, and preserve colors. Okay, let's see if that worked. Oh, that actually flattened it. So let's do it the other way. Okay, reset here. Let's do this by, and I do this flatten transparency. So that's not going to create any raster objects. It's going to actually create individual objects. So here we have blue. Here we have 0255. Red. Oh, that's right. Okay, so 255 of red, 255 of blue gives us like a purple. And this one is all of the values in it. So that is additive. Okay. So yeah, divide it using the flatten transparency. Okay, we're going to do one more. And I'm going to need to undo that to do this. Okay. Good. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this whole thing. I'm going to unlock my guides. Lock the guides. And so this is going to be CMYK, which is subtractive. So that means that we're going to be absorbing light. So let's actually go ahead and convert this to normal. First one is, so let's switch color modes to CMYK. I'm going to do 100%, 0%, 0%. So that gives us cyan, pure cyan, 0, 100, and 0. So 0% cyan, 100% magenta, 0% yellow. Let's see what's going on here. Let's do that again. Okay, I'm going to go here, and this one is going to be 0 cyan, 0 magenta, 100 yellow. You can see here that these colors have shifted. So that means not only is the preview in this color space different, but Illustrator is adjusting our colors because we're actually working in an RGB color space. So specifying CMYK colors in an RGB color space is going to result in your Illustrator shifting your colors so that it can actually be achieved in that color space. So, and I'll show you how to do it more accurately in the next file. But this one here, what we want to do now is we want to take these three and we want to combine them so that we're subtracting color as they get added together. So I'm going to go here to, again, to our opacity setting, and we're going to change this to multiply. And what that does is it does what we would expect. So you print yellow on top of cyan, you get this green. You print cyan on top of magenta, and you get this blue. You print magenta on top of yellow, and you get red. And when you print all three, in the center, you're going to end up with black. But here is something to think about, is that when we print with CMYK, we're printing cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. So that means that there's also a black ink on the press. So in order to really simulate what happens, we need to add the black because this is actually not black. And just to see what happens, I'm going to copy this, copy, and I'm going to go into another file here and delete this. And this one is set. So I want you to do the same thing. I want you to open up a file, same settings, but you're going to go here, like same artboard size, name it this, so name it your name, when, so 22.3F, color, and this time call it CMYK. I'm going to go here to object. So we have this copied in the clipboard. And oh yeah, the other thing you got to do is when you set up this file, and you do that when you open it, you can set it to CMYK, but if you forget and you miss it, go here to your file, document color mode, and set it to CMYK. So you'll see here in the tab at the top, now it says CMYK, and the other one says RGB. CMYK RGB. So I'm going to paste in front, and I didn't copy the guide, but that's okay. And you can see what's happening right away. This one here, we can reset it. So we get 100, 0. This is the one color that CMYK renders better than RGB, is cyan. All the other colors, RGB, it has a much larger color space. So here we go, 100. So now we have magenta, cyan, and yellow. And let's make sure we're blending these properly. Let's go here to our opacity. We're multiplying it, and you can see in the center that this no longer looks like black. So CMYK is giving us an accurate description of what this looks like on the screen. And if it's not, go up here to View, and where you're choosing your proof setup, make sure it's set to CMYK, and make sure that you're proofing the colors. So go here and proof colors. And it'll show you that it's a little bit gray. So how do we achieve the black? Well, we just have to, on the printing press, you actually print another color. So let's copy all these, copy them, go edit, paste in front, and the black is actually printed last. So on a printing press, you print from lightest to darkest. So you print the yellow first, magenta, cyan, and then black. And what we're going to do is we are going to choose our Pathfinder, intersect, and then we are going to change the center one to black. So 100% black. And you can see that's how you achieve it on the press. So CMYK, the K stands for black, and it's subtractive. And I'm going to save this. And then you're going to save it. So save both of them as optimized PDFs. So save as copy. Choose PDF. Delete the word copy. And what you're going to do, save this. And you're going to make sure you use this. Don't need crops and bleeds. no conversion necessary. So this one is important here. Keep the same color that you've been working with. Security. So, but if you're working on a digital file that's going to the press, one way that you can keep the most color space until the very end is keep working in RGB and just convert it at the end. So the printer will take it and convert it to CMYK.